I just want to start first, though, on the matter of Iran. Is the energy issue going to bring out a quick resolution to this war?
Well, I think what we're seeing here, of course, is the strength of President Trump, setting clear objectives, our military executing nearly flawlessly. And of course, what this exposes for the whole world is that we do have a terrorist regime that is threatening the world economy. I mean, this is a regime that 47 years ago, when they took over, literally took American hostages. Now they're holding the entire world economy hostage. President Trump and the allies understand that on the backside of this, when this is resolved, that the world's going to be peace. There's going to be more peace in the world. There's going to be more prosperity, and there's going to be more stability and more freedom and movement of energy for all countries.
Mr. Secretary, I want to ask you about some of the actions being put into motion when it comes to responding to the energy markets, including that earlier this week you said that domestic oil producers have told the administration that they're increasing output in shale basins. Could you give us any more insight into who those producers are and what kind of increase we can expect from that response and on what sort of timeline?
Well, as again, of course, in America, as you know, these are private companies. Some of them are public. I'll let them talk about their own production plans and their production increases. But certainly when there's a price indication that's happening right now, this is an opportunity. Shale producers have the ability to increase their production. Some of them have, drilled but uncompleted wells. They just have to turn those on. And of course, we're seeing our partners. I just got back from Venezuela last week, where you've got companies like Chevron that are indicating that they can accelerate their development in places like that. And of course, the administration taking steps in places like California, where we've got offshore in California that if it weren't being blocked by the state of California in terms of a regulatory and red tape, that could substantially increase the amount of oil being produced in California. So there's a lot. Every stone is being overturned. The team in D.C. and the team that's here across a whole set of cabinet members from the Trump administration that's here. We have 17 countries attending this Indo-Pacific Energy Security Ministerial. All of these countries are understanding that it's important for them, for their economies, and for their countries and for their citizens to have energy security. And they're looking to buy energy from a trusted ally. And of course, here we are in Japan, who's been buying LNG from Alaska for more than 50 years without a single interruption, because there are no choke points when you're buying energy from the United States. And that's very different than when you're buying from providers where you've got a terrorist regime, and whether it's directly the Iranians or their proxy, the Houthis, that can cut off flows of commerce to the world. Energy security matters to these buyers, and that's why we're seeing these senior leaders and some of the largest LNG companies in the world all here. There's going to be a lot of deals announced in the next couple days at this event, in the tens of billions of dollars, because there's that kind of understanding of the importance of energy security.
Well, we'd love to hear more about that when those deals are announced, Secretary. I hope you can come back to Bloomberg to tell us about it. I'm wondering what you're hearing from our allies, from our partners there in Tokyo about triple-digit crude oil, how long they can last before this damages their economies, and how often you're hearing China come up. Russia and China have been framed as the winners here.
Well, I think that one of the things that we're seeing is that, China having really benefited with the failed sanctions under the Biden administration. When we had failed sanctions on Venezuela, Iran, and Russia, the three places where we've had conflicts in the world, they've been buying for the last 3 or 4 years. They've been buying discounted oil, refined product and discounted oil. I mean, I basically say the failed sanctions, the Biden administration just turned Russia, Iran, and Venezuela into China's discount gas station. They took full advantage of that, building up the largest strategic petroleum reserve.
We've lifted sanctions on Russia, right?
Of course,
Secretary,
the United States.
Doesn't that make it cheaper for China?
Well, it's going to make it more expensive because that's going to increase the price of that floating oil that's out there right now. But this temporary waiver on the Russian floating oil, most of that oil had already left Russia, so Russia's not benefiting from that. If there's any price arbitrage, it was whoever owned the cargo after it left Russia. But that's going to help make sure that we can keep prices down for our allies like India and others. And so again, that was a smart move that the administration undertook on that temporary waiver on all that floating, the dark fleet oil that was out there, and again, to help relieve some of the short-term pressure. But meanwhile, our military making incredible progress on, securing the objectives of this conflict.
You said, Mr. Secretary, that there's a lot of tools that the administration can invoke. I'm wondering what's still on the table. Could we see a federal gas tax holiday? Could we see the invoking of the Jones Act, or even a push to get higher ethanol content gasoline onto the market?
Well, I think all of these ideas are under consideration, and we've got teams, like I said, that are working around the clock doing analysis and effort on this, and in an effort to try to focus on affordability and keeping the prices down. But this has been our focus since the day that President Trump took office. When he took office and declared an energy emergency, it was because energy prices were out of control, whether it was for electricity or for liquid fuels or for heating your home. And of course, those prices have dropped dramatically in last year because President Trump's policies of energy dominance, which is about having enough energy for low prices at home and being able to help lower prices for our allies. I mean, lifting the ban on LNG export facilities, which also happened immediately in the Trump administration, has allowed U.S. to become the #1 LNG export. We've displaced 2/3 of the Russian gas that was being sold into Western Europe this past winter. I mean, the estimates are that that's in the tens of billions of dollars that were saved by consumers in our allies because of U.S. being able to literally come to the rescue with low energy prices. And whether it's prescription drugs, whether it's housing, whether it's interest rates, whether it's food, President Trump has been on the march lowering those prices for Americans. And with this temporary interruption versus to have an opportunity for long-term transformation, I think this is something that everybody in the world should be joining in. If everybody thinks it's okay, to have a regime that killed 40,000 of their own people before this recent conflict even started, just because people were expressing free speech in the street. I think that's okay to have that group of people controlling the world's energy supplies in the world market. I would be surprised. I mean, people need to come to a realization that this is a global problem. People should be aligned with President Trump and aligned with the United States to say, we shouldn't be standing for having a group of terrorists control the global economy.
Yeah. Secretary Burgum, we heard from the head of the CME group today, Terry Duffy. You probably know each other. He was speaking at a conference in Florida and said the Trump administration would risk a biblical disaster, his words, if it attempts to lower oil prices by intervening in derivative markets, right? The oil paper market. We're talking futures and options. Is that something under consideration?
Well, I'd say there's certainly been a discussion. We got a lot of smart people working in this administration. There's a lot of smart people that work in the energy trading market. Energy trading is one of the biggest markets in the world. An intervention there to try to, manipulate and lower prices would require enormous amounts of capital. That's all I'll say on that front. But I'd say that right now, the best way to get prices down is increase supply to match demand. And President Trump, again, under President Biden, we were lowering the amount of energy we were producing. We were regulating it out of business, strangling entire industries that were producing either electricity or liquid fuels out of business. And now it's gone the complete opposite direction. It's about more electricity, more energy. The energy abundance, energy dominance is the supply side. Let's increase the supply to lower prices. We do have a temporary disruption in transit, but the world is well supplied, and that was reflected in the markets just a month ago, which is we've got, new sources coming on, whether Venezuela ramping up, whether it's other allies around the world. I mean, we're fortunate with new technology. The oil producers are producing more all the time. Just think 20 years ago, people thought the U.S. was going to run out of oil and gas. I mean, let's just step back a second and understand, how did we go from the sky is falling, we're running out of oil and gas, we're running out of energy, to becoming the world's #1 oil producer and the #1 natural gas producer, #1 LNG exporter? That was because of innovation. American innovation drove these dramatic turnaround, and that alone that is like $1 trillion tax break for Americans because of the energy innovation that's come from this private sector in the oil and gas and energy industries in our country. And now we have an opportunity to share that abundance with our friends and allies around the world. That's what we're doing here in Japan with these 17 countries that are here to sign deals with the U.S. for secure supply chains from places like Alaska, where we've got enormous amounts of LNG, and we could be providing all of our partners more secure and lower cost energy across the Pacific, our traditional allies, whether it's Japan, South Korea, Philippines, Taiwan, you go down the list, and our territories. I mean, the territories that are part of the U.S. Department of Interior, Guam, American Samoa, the Marianas Islands, these are all places where we've got military bases, and in many cases, including Hawaii, we're buying foreign oil. We have an opportunity in America under President Trump's energy dominance to sell energy even to our own territories and to our own states in the Pacific. Alaska's can be a key part of that. And so, again, even as we've got the conflict going on, this administration can do more than one thing at a time, and there's going to be incredible progress here on building a secure energy future for our allies and friends and our territories and our states in the Pacific.
Just very quickly, Mr. Secretary, for clarity, has the administration intervened already when it comes to the oil futures market?
Not that I'm aware of. Has there been any intervention in those markets?